It's no surprise that we're addicted to our screens. In fact, according to recent studies, the average American spends more than 5 hours on their phone every day in 2026 and also checks their smartphone every 10 to 12 minutes. Obviously, it's a problem. This has led a lot of travelers to feel like they need a break from their smartphone while they're on vacation. And so you maybe have seen a lot of travel publications recently talking about the digital detox travel trend, or maybe the analog vacation or dead zoning. All of these things are synonymous for basically taking a break from your smartphone while you're on vacation. Hi, I'm Abigail, a special contributor and editor with Travel Lemming, and when I heard about the digital detox trend, I knew that I had to give it a try. And so on my recent 10-day road trip from Denver, Colorado to California and back, I decided to completely forgo email, social media, and the Google search bar, and see how that maybe changed the way that I travel, perhaps for good. I entirely see why this is such a travel trend, but I would say there's maybe a few safety concerns to consider as well. Yeah. So, without further ado, here are 9 of my top tips that I recommend when taking a digital detox on your next vacation. Tip number 1, pack an analog bag. Basically, these are just going to be all of the activities that you're going to enjoy during your downtime on your trip. And of course, even with packed itineraries like mine, there's always a little bit of free time in between. Think about especially like mornings or time on the road. If you are going on a road trip like I did, you want to have a few things to entertain yourself and not tempt you to scroll. And so this is a little bit of a Mary Poppins situation here, but I'm going to show you what I had in my bag on my recent trip. And of course, you can adjust the activities based on what you find fun and interesting to do, but here's a little bit of inspiration. So what I had in my bag for my recent road trip included a book. I think that this is so nice to have during downtime, and it's just easy to pack. Of course, you know, you can also pack a magazine that's a little bit lighter and also has some bite-sized stories, so keep that in mind. I have a journal because, believe it or not, I love to write. I am a writer and a creator by profession, and so this was just nice to keep notes through my vacation. I also had a needlepoint craft. This is Christmas themed because these cross-stitching projects take me all year long, so hopefully this will actually be done by December, but if I keep taking digital detox vacations, maybe it will be. I also, this one's a little bit crazy. It's quite a few materials, but there are smaller options. I have a watercolor set here, and actually one morning I started working on a postcard that represents one of the destinations that I visited on my recent road trip. It was this beautiful campsite that had so many wildflowers, so just a fun activity as well on a quiet morning perhaps. And then if you're taking a trip like mine, I think it's nice to have some games for camp, and so this is just a bird-themed set of playing cards, but we also packed Uno, Scrabble. I will say, you know, if you are taking an analog vacation and you've got all these activities like mine, it might be a little bit hard to pack light, but again, there are smaller alternatives, magazines, smaller watercolor sets, that kind of thing that you can pack. Tip number 2, have planned activities. I am a type A traveler to a T. I truly have color-coded spreadsheets of everything we plan to do, and truly our road trip was jam-packed. I mean, we visited 3 national parks, hiked miles of trails, we made it out to the coast, drove more than 3,000 miles. I mean, it was a busy itinerary, so my temptation to scroll was pretty limited just because there was almost no time to. But, you know, if you don't like to plan a vacation that is jam-packed like that, totally get it. A lot of people prefer to have a little bit more of a lax vacation, but I will say if for a digital detox, you might want to at least have a few planned activities to limit your downtime, limit your temptation to scroll. I would also say that if you are traveling with others, that also makes it easier to stay off of your phone. I think naturally you have the opportunity to engage with those individuals. So travel with loved ones, friends, families, maybe even take a tour. I think that again, with other people around you, there's less temptation to be staring at a screen because you have others to engage with. I will also say too that I think having a packed itinerary, or at least one that has a few good activities, also just makes for a fuller experience and allows you to really appreciate a destination. So I would say if you are looking for inspiration on what to do, check out travellemming.com. We have guides to pretty much anywhere that you want to travel worldwide. So we are a great resource. We have local writers from all over the world who can tell you how to fill that itinerary in a really compelling way. Tip number 3, travel to a remote destination. Obviously, if you have limited to no cellular service wherever you're heading, you're not going to be tempted to scroll because it won't even be an option. I was actually surprised when I went out on our 10-day road trip to California and the Oregon coast. I didn't realize how actually remote that part of the country is, and so it was actually quite easy to disconnect because oftentimes my phone was just a total brick. I had 0 bars for a lot of the trip, and so that temptation to log on wasn't even there. So that's a benefit of heading somewhere quite remote. There were a couple opportunities for us to stay at this cute little cabin along this spot called Lake Davis. We also rented an adorable A-frame cabin over on the Oregon coast, and both of those places actually did not have Wi-Fi. And so that is another tip of mine. Opt for a place that doesn't have Wi-Fi. That's going to, again, reduce your temptation. And I would also say too, when you are out in the modern world and surrounded by technology, a more urban destination, I think it might be harder to log off. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you're looking to do a digital detox vacation, maybe look for somewhere out in nature where you're just surrounded by the sounds of the forest, or you're up in the mountains and it just feels maybe a little bit more natural to put that phone down. However, when you are out in nature and traveling to remote places, you also have to be cautious because there are things that may put you in a dangerous position, such as a bear on the trail that you were not expecting to see on your very first hike in California. I don't think that a digital detox has to be restrictive, and so my 4th tip is keep safety a priority. I really feel like there are others who talk about digital detoxes and they just completely recommend, log off entirely of all your devices, put the phone in a lockbox, don't touch it for a week. I think that a phone has a lot of benefits. And honestly, I think that if you were to forgo it entirely on a trip like I took or many other types of vacations, it could create potential safety hazards. And so I really think that if you are traveling abroad, having a translation tool just makes sense. Have that on your phone. I would also say if you're going on a road trip like mine and you're traveling 3,000 plus miles, Google Maps is there for a reason. Of course, you can pull out the paper analog map, but I just really feel like whether it be accidents or construction up ahead, etc., it's just nice to have a digital map tool at the ready. Also, if you were going out on hikes, things like All Trails and other trail navigation tools are also very smart for your safety. So keep that in mind as well. You want to track where you are on the trail and also make sure that trails are actually open and accessible. Sometimes they close for a variety of reasons. So there are great tools on your phone. I don't think that taking a digital detox should mean that you completely forego all of the things that just make sense. So personally, I kept those tools for my trip, and maybe you should too. Tip number 5, keep other apps that serve you. I don't think it's just about safety. I think that once again, there are apps on your phone that don't spike your cortisol and are actually really helpful for you and might be quite enjoyable on a trip. And so, for example, I would say that if you have fitness and well-being apps, things like a step counter, a calorie tracker, your sleep coach, a meditation app, don't forgo those good habits. Those are good things for you, and I really don't think a digital detox should take those away. And so, you can make your own call, but I personally would keep those kind of apps. I also kept educational tools. My mom always used to say, if it's educational media, it's a pass, right? And so I kept things like my Seek app, which allows you to identify local flora and fauna while you're out exploring, and it's also geolocated. And so I had so much fun just scanning all of these unfamiliar wildflowers and really cool things that I found in tide pools out on the Oregon coast. I just thought that was such a fun app to have in my back pocket. I also had a constellation app because we saw so many stars on our trip. And my husband had his Merlin ID app because he's a total birder and he wanted to, check off all of these birds that he doesn't usually get to see back home. So again, these are fun tools that I really don't think are, necessarily harming us or toxic in any way. So we kept those on our phone. We were really intentional about what entertainment we had downloaded on Spotify. And so, I had things like feel-good podcasts, some good stories, some fun road trip music. We also had a couple audio books downloaded on Audible. So, again, these were like very intentional choices. We kind of left the doom and gloom type newsy stories for when we get back from our trip, but I really felt like this was a good way to find a sort of sense of balance with our technology and just make the road trip a lot more enjoyable. Tip number 6, download your media files in advance. Especially if you're traveling somewhere remote, you are not probably going to be able to do that once you are struggling to find a single bar out there in the wilderness, right? So I would highly recommend, downloading all of that media we just talked about in advance. Make sure you have your music, your podcast, your audiobooks. Also, a safety tool, make sure that you have your trail maps as well as your Google Maps or whatever navigation tool you might use when driving. Make sure that those offline maps are downloaded. We made the mistake of not doing that on our recent road trip. And so for the first couple of days, we definitely had moments where we were just kind of lucky guessing our way on which highway do we jump on. Fortunately, we had a sort of understanding of where we were headed, but don't want to test fate on that. So download your maps in advance. You might also want to print or screenshot any kind of important files. So think about like your car insurance information, your itinerary, and any kind of reservations for accommodations, tours, any other activities that you have booked, because you may not have self-service to pull that up. And again, you're avoiding your email anyway, right? So keep all of that in mind and you should be all set. Tip number 7, communicate your plans. I think this one is so important and something that I actually overlooked on my first day of our digital detox road trip. I realized just outside of Colorado that I never set an automated out of office message to go out to my clients and colleagues. And if I was just MIA for 10 days, I think that could maybe put me in a little bit of a hot seat when I come back to regular day-to-day life. And so I'd highly recommend doing that, especially if it's work related. And then beyond that, make sure that you are very clear in your short, simple message when you are returning from your trip, just so it's, helpful to those individuals receiving your automated message as to when they're going to hear back from you. So keep that in mind. I would also say too, especially if you're traveling somewhere remote and you're not going to have a lot of service on your trip, make sure to share your itinerary with an emergency contact. This is also something that I kind of overlooked for the first couple of days and made my poor mother a little bit worried. So make sure to share your itinerary. And then lastly, I would say that if you are traveling with loved ones, communicate what your intentions are as it relates to your digital detox, because my husband was not taking a break from his phone, which is obviously totally fine. But I did tell him early on to the trip what my plan was, how I wanted a real break from really the outside world. And so I told him, please don't give me news updates. I don't really want the doom and gloom right now. I'm on vacation. I'm working on my mental health. I'm going to take a break from this and come back to that, become, caught up on things when I return from my trip. And so he was really, good about not keeping me in the loop on those kind of things. And also just, not showing me dumb memes too, right? Again, I was trying to be in the moment and really just take in everything around me. So I think that's helpful. Let your people know that you just don't really want to see their feed for a couple of days. Tip number 8, make exceptions for meaningful connections. This is probably my favorite tip, and I really feel like was one of the largest learnings that I took away from this digital detox experiment. I would say that really early on into the trip, I found myself just craving connection. And I did spend 10 hours in the car that day, and there wasn't a lot of stimulus happening, but I do think that even social media, there's this certain sense of connection. You're seeing what people are up to. You can send quick little DMs and that kind of thing. And without having the scroll, I just kind of felt a little bit disconnected. And so I took that opportunity to connect with my closest loved ones. And so throughout the trip, by no means was I texting the entirety of my contact list, but, I was texting my mom, I was texting my in-laws, I was texting my closest friends and giving them updates. Maybe some digital detox purists would say that I was maybe missing the point. I would argue that those moments really created meaningful connections, and ones that I think were just so much more impactful than me just posting for the masses and waiting to see their, generic like. Like, this was an opportunity for me to share stories with them, touch base with them, feel connected with somebody. And so I really think that, again, a digital detox doesn't have to be restrictive. If you want to text and call, you should feel empowered to do so. Lastly, tip number 9, journal your experience. For this one, we're going to go back to the analog bag here because I've already pulled this out, and that is a journal. I really feel like even if you don't identify as a writer, I think that journaling your experience throughout your digital detox is such an impactful and really important thing to do. And so first of all, you're on vacation. I really think that there's so much that you're taking in while you're away that I think those little moments that on the trip really inspired this sense of awe, sense of wonder, a certain novelty. But those little moments can sometimes get lost with some of the bigger activities that you do. And so I think that a journal is great for, recording those lesser but really important moments of your trip. But I also feel like a journal is great for just talking through your digital detox experience as a whole, because you might be able to use those insights to kind of inform how you want to engage with technology when you come back into the day-to-day. I mean, I journaled about my digital detox experience and just found it to be so insightful and kind of allowed me to process, how I was feeling throughout each day. And oftentimes it kind of made me realize like how full my life is when I'm not spending multiple hours on my screen. So, you might come across those types of realizations, and I really think that a journal is something that you should absolutely have in your analog bag. Vacations are full of novelty, and honestly, I would say if there's any time that's easier to log off and be away from your screens, it's when you're on vacation. I mean, you've got a packed itinerary and all of these new experiences and so many fun things to do, and you're out of your usual routine, so it's a little bit easier to take a digital detox. But when you come back into regular life, it can be quite tempting to fall back into old habits. I mean, already I am guilty of doing so. I will say though that the tips that I've shared with you today are ones that can be adopted for everyday life as well. Rather than maybe posting for the masses, look for those one-on-one connections with your closest loved ones. Maybe don't have the apps downloaded on your phone and have a little bit of friction and you have to go onto your desktop if you want to scroll through Instagram. I would also say have analog activities around. If you're feeling a little bit bored after work or you're looking for something to do, rather than maybe scrolling, maybe you pick up one of your activities and you do something creative or interesting or educational that just feels a little bit more fulfilling. I really enjoyed my experiment with the digital detox travel trend, and honestly, I think it's a trend that's here to stay. I mean, so many of us have burnt out of just having screens in front of us at all times, having the smartphone in our back pocket, and so this digital detox trend is just so easy and simple and also free and just offers this great opportunity to reset and maybe even use it as a springboard to change your relationship with technology in everyday life. So if you want to take a trip like mine, you can watch episode 18 of the Travel Lemming podcast, where me and 2 other creators talk about road tripping across the American West.